This year I painted 54 miniatures. If I were including the Dust 1947 miniatures that have multiple people on the bases, I could add another 10 to that number. 2 of the 54 were large busts, and I painted one large terrain piece for the Spider-Man vs. Dr. Octopus rival panel set from Marvel's Crisis Protocol. Some notes concerning the next year. I have Warhammer stuff I was supposed to start painting, but I never got around to it. I'll be changing that in January. I'll also be painting a lot of large batch projects, as a lot of it will be to paint board game pieces or Warhammer units. I'll also continue to paint things from Marvel's Crisis Protocol, Dust 1947, and Kingdom Death. I'm also considering doing a few uncut and unnarrated projects with maybe a 5-minute summary of what was done overall at the beginning. This I would break down into multiple sub-videos, like one video for flesh, one for clothing, one for weapons, etc. I'm also in the process of completely overhauling my setup for filming, as that's why it took so long to get this video to come out. So there may be some quality changes and testing occurring in the first quarter as I fine-tune lighting and camera placement. I'm also debating on cutting my intro and outro out entirely. No one needs to see my smiling face, and ultimately, even that minor of a change will save me 10 minutes of work as far as filming and editing goes. Here are the 5 most important miniatures I painted as far as a learning experience goes. Mara Frostblade. This miniature had a bad molding with the scabbard completely missing. I had to make one from Milliput, which was my first experience sculpting. It isn't perfect, but this forced me out of my comfort zone, where originally I was going to try and cut and sand this as a smooth section of clothing. The Halfwork Fighter. This miniature was my 4th attempt at a non-metallic metal, with my first 3 being the Knight Templar, the Highland Heroine, and Mara Frostblade. The 2 women miniatures were the cheap white plastic molds, which was difficult for me to paint due to the uneven and poor molding. I think if I had to repaint these I could do better, but I would have to spend a lot more time sanding the swords and then dipping them in hot water to try and straighten them. Jill Kill Flynn? This miniature I 3D printed was the first actual miniature and not bust that I tried airbrushing different colors from different angles with blues from the back. Unintentionally, I think I realized I kept to a Zorn palette on the front. If I had done the sword in non-metallic metal, I think it would have been a better look. However, it is yellow as my idea was she was on the shore of the beach, facing the last minutes of a setting sun. The Mercenary Anti-Tank Squad. The soldier in the shorts particularly, as this is where I started to get some semblance of placing highlights in the appropriate areas for musculature. I remember having repainted the highlights on her abdominal muscles twice before getting it better. Sophie the Sage. She had no nose, literally looking like Marvel's Red Skull or a ghoul from Fallout if you will. I had to sculpt one for her, which wasn't overly hard but felt like an impossible task considering how small this needed to be, on top of needing to be centered on her face. I remember being surprised by how quick and how little effort it actually took. Now let's take a look at the top 5 worst paint jobs I did this year, at least in my opinion. The male Elf Paladins. The flesh came out okay, but the armor and clothing are rough. The weaponry is just a couple of metallic paints, and there are awful mold lines everywhere that I missed. I should have spent more time on the armor as well. The claw-handed large demon. The colors are fine, and most of the highlights I'm okay with, as well as the transitions between the colors. Though looking back now, I think there needs to be some darker blues for the shadows on the upper body of the woman, and I definitely need something such as dots or models to break up the plainness of the purples and blues. The hot glue fire was a mess also. I should probably just tear that off, and maybe I can 3D print some fire for it. The next on this list is technically 3 separate miniatures, but I dislike them all for the same reasons. They were from the white flimsy plastic miniatures from Reaper. I love what the sculpt should be, but I need to see if these are available in metal and not this cheap white plastic. The quality is significantly lower on these casts, and they're much more difficult to clean up, especially the mold lines. I do expect I could repaint these better if I tried again. The female Wraith. I had started doing a string of miniatures that made me feel like I had learned a lot. This one, however, felt like regression. Granted, this was also from the white soft miniatures as the previous listing, however this one stung more, due to how disappointed in it I was after painting the previous half dozen miniatures that preceded it. The Christmas Dragon. I should have spent a significant more time in the hide, considering it takes up so much of the body, maybe giving it some spots for a modeled look, much like the claw-handed demon. For the miniature I end this year with, this was just lazy on my part, and I can do better. For the top 5 miniatures I painted this year, at least in my opinion, Dr. Octopus and Spider-Man is the first on the list. Doc's muzzle flare is just not good, but I'm satisfied how his almost Saiyan-like get-up turned out, as well as the highlights on Spider-Man. There are some rough spots on both, but I felt like I made significant progress as a miniature painter after having finished these two. The Maggot Crown Bone Sack. I just love how this one came out. Considering I put forth very little effort into it, the egg sack, hair from tufts, and gore helped sell this abomination. The 2009 Christmas Sophie. As far as the flesh goes anyway, the undertones of purple show up well, adding a lot of warmth to her body. I had to fix some really bad glaze transitions on her legs, which was a good learning experience. The Christmas Knight. The non-metallic metal sword almost came out good. The color scheme came out well, however I should have done the gold metallics as non-metallic metal as well. Otherwise I'm happy with how he came out. I remember having a feeling of, I don't like this mini and I just don't want to keep painting it, and then suddenly thinking, this is coming out pretty good, and then I enjoyed it. Now I just need to figure out, does he look more like Chris Evans from Avengers Endgame, William Atherton from Ghostbusters, Charles Dance from Last Action Hero, or Chuck Norris? Justine & Co.'s 6 maintenance contractors, particularly the one merc with the bikini top. The highlights on her skin came out very well as the highlights on her clothing. I've been trying to put a miniature out every week, however I may move to a miniature every other week and increase the time I'm putting into each one. That or alternate with painting one fast and another with a lot more effort and quality for a final product. Here is a look at my final numbers for my first year and second year. The second year I hit a brick wall on channel growth, but then it started picking up again in the final quarter. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this next year. Thank you for watching this video, and many thanks to my subscribers. I hope you all have a happy new year, and I hope to see you again in this 2024.